And so we have William Hockey, who is also with the St. Margaret's Bay Housing Coalition. And Bill is an architect with 50 years of experience in the preservation field, and early experience led him to an interest in how costs and technical problems affected the use of historic buildings as an alternative to new construction, which has since been a central focus throughout his career. He currently offers consultant services through his firm based in Halifax, and in his role he has worked with the restoration of historic masonry and maintenance planning, provided functional training to Parks Canada staff, and functional guidance for a number of clients. As part of his work with the St. Margaret's Bay Housing Coalition, Bill and a small group of volunteers have formed the Housing Redevelopment Group, which was established to review the possibility of redevelopment of older, larger homes to accommodate multiple tenants. And today he's going to be sharing some details about those efforts to date and future plans for that initiative. Thanks, Bill.
Got it. Okay, she's already mentioned that the committee was established to review the possibility of redevelopment of older homes to accommodate multiple tenants. And I'm just going to go through where we left with our committee. We haven't been very active, and part of the reason is because I have my hobby job, and when that work is done, the construction season is over, I'll be back on that with a group. But what we recognize is that in order to accommodate people in multiple housing, one of the things you're going to have to do is talk to the authorities, because it's not a common use, multiple tenants in an existing residential unit in a neighborhood that's R1. So what we have decided is we definitely would follow up, but we would follow up and try and put an example together looking at an existing building and say this is how we want to do it, then talk to the municipality. And our thought was that the vehicle would probably be tenants in common, which is multiple tenants renting one unit. One of the things as a group we want to do is set up a drop box, hopefully at the Seniors Association, so that people who have interest in this kind of possibility of shared housing have a chance to drop off information and let us know and what they might be interested in. And then we did look at a number of possibilities for internet, and I think it was important. We started to say there's not much sense in doing research until you have a focus to that research. And so the resource material would be better sought once you decided on the unit you had and the kind of approach you had before you started to sort out the information, because once you have a focused search on the internet, you get much better information. We looked at a number of possibilities for development of several resources. This hasn't happened to date, but what I'd like to do is I'll go through my own home, for example. My wife and I live in a very large house in Bootler's Point. A number of years ago, her mother was living in Calgary, which we had lived in, and we moved back. She stayed. But we were starting to get calls at 3 and 4 in the morning. And to give you an example, the paramedics are there because she's fallen down in her bathroom against the bathroom door, and she can't get out. Nobody can get the door open because she's in against the door. So the paramedics are there pulling her, taking the door off, getting her out of the bathroom, getting her settled. We're 3,000 miles away from that. We can't do very much about it. It's getting pretty disconcerting for my wife. So she eventually went out and set it up, and we brought her back to live with us. Now, our house is a 2-story house with a walkout basement on a slope, so it's 3 stories basically. What I did before her mother came was installed a stair lift to the 2nd floor, which is not a bad idea, and I was quite surprised because the installed stair lift was about $3,500, which I thought was pretty good. Once we got her there, she utilized that lift, but it get the stage where even it has a remote control, and thank goodness, because at the stage as she declined, she couldn't even operate the lift, but we get her up and down using that lift. So, and then there's the main level, which is the kitchen, dining room, living room, and half bath. So if you looked at that from a perspective of multiple occupancies, on the second floor, which is a bedroom, which is accessed by a stair lift, you have the master, which has an ensuite, so that's one possibility for multiple occupancy. You have another bathroom on that level, and then you have two bedrooms, so you could look at two possible people with a shared bath. So there's three couples on that building. If you come down, the main level is a common area. There's a half bath there, so it's a place that it works out fairly well for common use. It's a kitchen, dining room, living area. Then if you went the lower building, that's an issue because there's another stair. So you either put a stair lift in, but it's also got a grade level entrance. So if you're looking at converting that space, and I think the previous owner had tried, but you could very easily put a full apartment on that level because there's a full bath there with a shower, not a tub. And you could walk out on that building. So there's another, so there's at least 4 potential tenants in that building, but the code's not going to allow that. And that's where you have to get to the tenant in common issues. Although currently, self-contained units are now coming up, and I think that it looks like we're getting more receptive to creative solutions that develop that area. So what I'm going to say is that we as a group plan to get together probably sometime after the end of October when I've finished my business, my work in BIDEC, and get back focused on pulling together an example and then following up and seeing where we can go with it. And basically, that's where I am. My focus, and I say, when you're working with existing buildings and when you're modifying existing buildings, you need to focus development in a way that keeps the cost down. And it doesn't necessarily mean that I was trained as an architect, and trained as an architect, what am I going to do? I'm going to design a space that suits my client's needs. When you're adapting an existing resource, you have to look at it in a different way. And that is, how can I fit my client's needs in this space? And the reason for that is because when you focus your changes and approach it from using the best use of the resource, you have a minimum cost for that approach. So that's where I'm going. Hopefully we're going to follow up on this process come the end of October and get somewhere with it. So thank you.
Thank you, Bill. I'm fascinated by all the disciplines that feed into affordable housing in such an interesting way. I'm curious, we have in the North End a group that's working. I'm curious about your background in heritage work and historical masonry, because we have in the North End a group that's working on heritage preservation.
Yep.
And we, at the same time, are working on this community land trust. And there's a bit of a tension in, so for example, one of the houses, we have a variance to turn into 2 units, but that's going to go against heritage. So I'm wondering if you could, or will it?
I don't, one of the things I learned, I did a master thesis on the redevelopment of buildings, okay? And I pulled together 54 Canadians case studies in order to do that, and it took me a year to get them, even with my background in the field. But one of the things I've always said, in order to survive, a building has to have a use, okay? And so if 2 tenants in a building is the best use of that building, then you look at that, and if you have a designated building, then you focus the development in a way that respects what is important historically about that resource, but at the same time allows you to add the results in to deal with the multiple occupancies. I'll give an example. So with Parks Canada, if you look at Monument Lefebvre, for example, it had a real rickety fire escape on one end of the building, and it has an auditorium on the second level. When I looked at that particular building, we decided, and we added to the building a stone addition that involved a vertical stair involve the things that we needed to put in that building in order for it to satisfy certain issues. But every result is different, so it depends on the resource you have, and it depends on what your needs are. But what I will tell you and anybody else here is I answer all emails. So if you have a question, I will follow up.
We will take you up on that. So they're not exclusive, in other words. I just assume that they are somewhat in tension or exclusive of each other, but not the heritage status and.
I don't
redeveloping the home.
think, because I focused on non-designated buildings with my thesis, okay? Designation is another factor, but it's just a factor.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Hopeful.
I missed sort of the first short chunk of your talk, and so I think I missed something. You mentioned that there was some sort of zoning barrier to having multiple tenants in a home, and would that be in land use bylaws that I would learn more about that, or?
It's in the bylaws. I haven't approached the HRM yet, but what we're seeing, and with all the presentations today, we're seeing is that there is becoming much more flexible in dealing with those kinds of issues. And so, but I think you don't approach them with a broad scope slate. You approach them, this is the direction I want to go, and how can we deal with that? And that's been the intent of the group all along. So, but overall, if you're in a single-family neighborhood, you're now getting, in some areas, the ability to add a second unit, which you had a good presentation about. And in other cases, you're not. So you have to look at those things. Portable housing's another, there's all kinds of solutions.
So
and we're all
like,
pretty-
will
but
the
it-
neighborhood allow you to rent at all?
but yeah, you don't know until you check the rules and regs. So that's what you have to do. And then you may be able to go ahead. And I don't think there's an issue where you could go ahead in spite of the regulations. I think you pretty well have to know what they are and adhere to them. It's one of, you can't just go on your own way, even though you think it might be the best approach.
Would that be in the land use bylaws that we can go to?
It will be in the HRM. So if you come, if I'm in, say, on Hillside Drive, Boulers Point, what I'm allowed to do there.
So I just called 311 or something?
Yeah,
Okay.
just, yeah, talk to the authorities.
Thank you, Bill. So we're going to wrap up there. Hannah, maybe you can ask Bill on break, because we're going to take a quick break.